Inmendham video. Somewhat in the old style. Birds and stuff, but I'm not walking. So it's an Inmendham sitting style video. Alright, anyway, enough of the preliminaries, but somebody will play this video and play that part and it'll be totally useless. Anyway, so two things. The subject was brought up by a certain individual who's pro-life and gave silly psychobabble, vacuous, no reasoning or logic applied to the subject of life and its worthwhileness as an experiment, like the Earthling experiment versus, say, the Martian experiment. You could compare the necessity of these things and do rational equations instead of just mushy, I feel like living. You know, that's just really not much of a statement. I mean, it's a lot of a statement for an imbecile, but it's not much of a statement for somebody who's engaged in the obligations of doing something called logic. So anyway, I'll get to that. Speaking of imbeciles, there's this something Chastain person. I have to say person because it's sort of ambiguous, you know, needs a pronoun. Anyway, you know, giving me a lecture in the comments section on that, you know, rape is an act of violence, not sex, blah, 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 blah. And this is, yes, this is jargon people speak, but it's bullshit. Of course it's a sex act. People have what are called fetishes. You know, we sometimes they're called, you know, sexual, it's a P word, preferences. But they're basically just fetishes. They're ways that they get into the mood. And everybody fetishizes to some extent. Voyeur, exhibitionist, rough sex, keep it simple, stupid. Everybody has their thing. And the difference between somebody who acts on things that are aggressive and things that don't are, you know, this idea of them understanding I can't be a criminal, either because they're afraid of getting caught or because I don't want to do something bad. You know, I don't want to be a bad person. I mean, clearly all pedophiles like kids. They don't like to torture them. I mean, the only ones who torture them are the serial killers. And clearly they're serial killers because they don't mind torture and death. They don't see those as negative things. So, in a sense, they're just doing somebody a favor, kind of. But it's the fact that it's a sex act is undeniable. They are aroused by it. They have sex to it. It's just silly not to call it a sex act. I mean, really silly. I mean, stupendously silly. And yes, okay, for some agenda you want to say it's not a sex act because you want to make it some sort of hate crime. But it's a crime, it's not a hate crime, it's a fetish crime. Doesn't mean, you know, well, anyway, it's a crime of their passion and the fact that they have issues. Just like some people are masochists. They're not really winning. You know, as it's been pointed out, their psychology is that the one kind of pain is controllable and it gives them control over another kind of pain, an internal pain that they don't have control over. And so they gain control over a worse humiliation pain or insecurity pain or whatever you want to call it by using this other controllable pain as a tool to conquer the other pain. So anyway, I just want to point, I mean, you know, go ahead and preach whatever crap you want to preach, but there was never any evidence for this stupid declaration that rape isn't a sex crime. Of course it is. It's just idiotic. I mean, except in the cases where it's being used by people who are getting off on the bully thing. On humiliating somebody. Obviously, one of the best ways to humiliate somebody is to attack their masculinity if it's a male, or where they're most vulnerable, and that is these insecurities about our sexuality and our being naked and all that stuff. So yes, some people will to humiliate somebody because they get off on that, but not necessarily sexually. So yeah, they'll fuck them with broomsticks or something. But again, that you could say is not directly related to sex. They're only using sex because it's a way of humiliating somebody. So it's, in that case, you can make your argument. But in the traditional rape, it's clearly part of the person's sexual identity that they get off sexually on the act. Just so, duh. Anyway, I mean, double duh. Alright, so to the other imbecile. Who's a religious kook. Again, this is just the defense of traditional edicts, declarations that have never been supported by any argument or evidence. They're just declarations. God says life is good. And then they converted that, well, there's no God, so then they just converted that to Mother Nature wouldn't have made it if it's not good, or some other kind of absolute crap that has nothing to do with anything called evidence or truth or logic or reasoning or any of that shit. So anyway, I just would like to contrast these two positions of pro-life and anti-imposition, you could say. Certainly you could just say anti-life, as long as you understood what that means. Doesn't mean harm or killing or murdering. It just means don't make it. They don't do anything productive. They're mess makers and they only clean up half the mess they make. They're mess makers and they only clean up half the mess they make overall. So if you put a bunch of them somewhere, you're guaranteed to have a mess left over. Just guaranteed. And so this is where the argument again breaks down, because these evaders will sit there and pretend, oh, this isn't about a bunch of them. This isn't about the whole. It's just about me. It's just about my life. And then they're doing that from a position where their life is an example of failure. And they're still making this arrogant statement that, no, I'm pro, in spite of the fact that I have dismally failed, which doesn't make any sense at all. Where they're an example of the mess maker. Tragic failure. A catastrophic failure. Could have been worse. But only good fortune prevented that, because they didn't do anything to prevent it. So, there's just so much to argue with, because the arguments are so vacuous. So it's this argument that somehow, if you don't like the idea of living things being put on a game where obviously it's a fair analogy to say this roller coaster that you're putting your children on isn't super cool. It's dangerous. Now it might be super cool in the sense that danger's cool, but, for Snake Plisskenus types, I guess. So what? Every now and then somebody randomly gets their head whacked off. No big deal. And a few of them will get, AIDS or cancer or some other, it's okay. They're acceptable losses. I didn't lose, so yeah, I didn't feel a thing. Now, starting with that premise, now if you want to argue that no, that's not what life is a perfect roller coaster, then you're really a lunatic. So, I mean, if you have to concede at least that this is very dangerous, it can end for individual lives in complete catastrophe, failure, total loss, so to speak, big fat red number. And yes, and sometimes you can take the ride and you'll scream and get excited and you'll survive and you won't be too beat up. And the question is, though, is as a rational person, when there's no need to take the ride, does he build one on Mars and then make Martians to ride on it? Is there any reason to do that? And no, there isn't. And again, it's this collective argument. So the evasion is this idea that somehow you can vote for Trump, but then you can say, I didn't get him elected. You can say, I voted for Trump, but all the bad things he did, I didn't do. I didn't cause. I wasn't a cause of the effect of Trump presidency. I didn't make the guy who is going to destroy environmental regulation. I didn't make the guy who's going to maybe prevent a few illegals from getting into the country, but will no doubt make sure plenty of dioxin and other chemistry gets in. Because hell, we're not going to bother inspecting anything. Food safety, who cares? If you're rich, you can buy that by buying it from a company that'll guarantee it. So, bad food will only poison the poor people. And, they're mostly immigrants anyway, so go ahead and kill them. Well, anyway, I won't get into the politics, but obviously, if you voted for Trump, you're the cause of the effect. You just are. And if you say you're pro-life, you have to accept that you're pro every bit of it. You can't just pretend it doesn't come as a package deal, because it does. Just as Hillary Clinton came as a package, and you had to judge it based on the package. And it was a disgusting package, but it wasn't nearly as disgusting as Trump. Not even in the same ballpark of disgusting. Trump is the dumbest man on earth. It really is. I mean, if you really add up all the misconceptions, yes, he has vocabulary, but he really doesn't know what anything means. Doesn't have any sense of anything's importance, or there's just a sound in his head that just keeps going Trump, 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 and that's all he knows. What's in it for Trump? The Trump brand. Well, anyway. So yes, you can't have a rational conversation with people that are just going to evade reasoning, and then use this really weak argument of, well, you don't see it my way because you're a psychotic. You don't see it my way because you have an emotional problem. Some kind of bullshit like that. Yeah, you don't see it my way because you're blind or something. Physically actually blind. No, none of those are true. None of those things have anything to do with this. And that's just absolute bullshit. It's just an evasion of the subject, which is the reasoning applied, and recognizing that what is really broken in terms of this argument is your injection of your fetish for life, your perception of its necessity that's based on not a single shred of reasoning. It's just based on an emotional reaction to your perception that somehow you-ness will not exist if people don't exist. Like somehow you're you-ness. Because I think you're not stupid enough to realize, not to recognize that you have no personal stake in the future. Because you're going to be dead. But maybe these idiots do think technology's going to show up just in time, and they're going to be able to live forever, and blah, 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 blah. Maybe they have some idiotic fantasy like that. And like it won't get samey as fuck if they did. Anyway, and that you know that if a future was to be high-tech, it's going to have to be also highly regulated, which means that it's not going to be incredibly interesting or challenging, because you're basically going to live in a controlled mommy state, because if not, everything gets blown up, because information is power. Anyway, sorry, smoking, vaping. Yeah. It's not quite the same as a cigarette in terms of the interruption power. It's also chemically a little different. I mean, what it does to my brain. It does take me a little while to recover sometimes. Anyway, so so there's so many arguments you can make about this idea of first do no harm, or don't make an unnecessary harm. Don't do anything to cause unnecessary harm. And as soon as you say the word unnecessary, you have to think about what that means. And the only necessity that exists is the perception of necessity in these idiots' heads. They don't have an argument, and I've pointed it out over and over again, but there's no real response. The case of the Martians. Nobody's walking around having a bad day, you know, feeling all sad and lamenty, because life doesn't exist on Mars in the Martian form. That, oh, it's just such a huge universal deprivation, the loud empty sound, how they endure the nothing, how can we possibly be satisfied? They even use words like that. Piro ended, well, I didn't want to say his scummy name, ended his video with this stupid line. Well, even if you eliminated life, you'd still be unsatisfied. So, you know, yes, I'd be in nowhere space, unsatisfied with the nowhere space. You know, just this whole idea that somehow the I never dies. So that's the religion part. He does think we eternally float around in the universe, that our mind space is somehow fingerprinted onto the universe, and that information will never go away, and the me will be floating through the eternity as a a mind space, along with the Tyrannosaurus mind spaces and every inchworm and every fly maggot. All of their little souls will be banging around, and we'll be flying around in the mind space. No, none of that. That's all complete delusional nonsense. It has nothing to do with reality. And but this is how weak their arguments are. They don't think about this subject. You know, it's just, well, that's another comment. I might as well read it. You know, I might as well respond to, because it was just so fucking stupid. One of these stupid, whatever, MGTOW people says to me, what about DNA and semen evidence? You know, because of the rape argument, that women can't prove they're raped. And you're just like, he hasn't thought about this for 10 seconds. That DNA doesn't prove the person had non-consensual sex. Your semen doesn't have rapey semen in it. It doesn't say you stuck a knife to her neck and told her you'd kill her other children if she didn't just shut the fuck up and take it. Now, you know, there's no, where's that going to be in DNA or semen, that proof? You know, as I made the argument, there's no videotape. Obviously the videotape would show the knife, you see, idiot? Or it would show the man, you know, you would clearly be able to tell the difference between consensual and non-consensual in 99% of cases if you had a videotape. Well, 95% or something. So you know, but just, you're saying, this guy just literally, he hasn't thought about this for 2 fucking minutes. And yet he opines on the subject on the internet. These weak ass, I have an opinion. Women are scummy, therefore everything women do is scummy. They're not really raped. They're blah, 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 blah. It doesn't really happen. It doesn't happen in my world. And I don't have any siblings, and I don't have a mother, and I don't have anybody who's ever been vulnerable. So I can't have any knowledge of anything. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. But to make an argument that bad, and then he sits there and says, and then accuses me of being religious. And you're just saying he didn't even watch the video. And he comments. And so that is the rag of this whole fucking media, is this lack of accountability. This lack of having to have some kind of credibility in these arguments. And again, that's the context between, you know, as far as I'm concerned, with what makes what's his face so obnoxious isn't just the fact that he has this silly pro-life superficial opinion, is that he has it in the context of his own life experience, which demonstrates how you don't fuck with this stuff, that we're not competent, that we don't have the necessary character, that we are too distractible, that we will, you know, instead of thinking about I'm raising human beings, he has to admit he was spending a little too much time saying I like to play pool and get drunk with the fellas. in my personal house where I'm supposed to be raising human beings. That kind of bullshit. And he can't even admit that. Somehow the new improved humans will fix it. And we just elected Trump. He thinks the solution is coming right down the road any day now. The country just elected Trump, you idiot. I mean, it's a bleak time to be a human being. And he's talking about how I have the emotional problem, how I'm not seeing the wonderful promise and fantasticness that's just sitting there waiting for us. Because we're going to do this all right somehow. And what is right anyway? Create Borgites. Create a little Borglet. Because if you don't, it's the rickety roller coaster. The only safe seat is the one on the wing. It's kind of like this airplane scenario or something. Yeah, you can lower your risk a little bit. You take the seat in the tail. Yeah, the tail does pretty good. So yeah, get a seat in the tail. Yeah, just so stupid. Alright, so let's see if there's anything else in these notes. But, I mean, he just keeps the same bullshit. Oh, we can't do this math. We can't figure out that I'm not allowed to torture a few people. We don't know how many I'm allowed to torture. Yeah, we know. None, if you don't have a good reason. And you don't have any good reasoning. Again, just like the absent Martians, identify the crisis, point to it, show in the universe how it's just totally flawed and broken beyond, oh, it's just totally unacceptable. It hurts so bad. Oh, it hurts. Oh, stop the torture. Stop the pain. Show me the pain. Show it to me. And then make your argument that humans are necessary, or that fucking fly maggots are necessary, or fleas are necessary, or all the other, I go down the whole biologically disgusting list of parasitic organisms. Go ahead, make your argument that any of this is necessary harm. But again, and this idea that all we can do is sail our own little boat, that we don't really elect anybody, and we don't really vote for anything, and anything we support we don't cause. We have a pet, no, the pet has us. I mean, just evasion after evasion after evasion for the fact that we are the ones in control. We do have the power, and that's just a fact. And you have to take responsibility for the fact that you're making a bad choice, instead of this this lame crap that there was no choice. There was a choice, and you made it. You're making it, and then you're defending it with the same kind of insipidly stupid, vacuous arguments that the Hillary haters used. Which is, she's just as bad. No, she's not. It's logically provable that you could have predicted the consequences of putting the wackiest fringe of the Republican Party in control of the country. That's a predictable train wreck. I mean, he was already promising what he was going to do, which is make the rich richer. I mean, it was, well, I don't want to go back through that ancient history, but too stupid. All right, so again, the anti-natalists right now, they're all kind of talking about this anti-natalism word and the anti-natalist club, and I've always been a little bit yick on that word. My first reaction to the word was I hated it. Now I've only come to tolerate it because that smell has been in the air so long that I can tolerate the word. But yeah, it's a creepy word in my opinion. I'd rather be an anti-lifer or an anti-harmist, so anti-impositionist. That's why I called myself an ethicist, was because the word doesn't cover the subject, and it's too specific, in a sense, to natal, which is more about raising than necessarily procreating. So, I mean, it should almost be anti-procreationist, but anyway, and that's even uglier as a song title. Anyway, So yeah, so it's always about this imposition arguments we made zillions of times. You just don't have a right to throw slaves in your trunk and mistreat them. So you can go to the store and buy M&Ms. You know, you have to show a greater necessity. Not only that, it's somehow you won't die if you torture these people who will be harmed on the roller coaster. You have to have a good reason to keep putting kids on this thing. And you have no reasoning. You just have this vacuous statement, me wanty, me wanty, me wanty, me wanty. It's a 2-year-old response. It just doesn't have any, it's just this visceral statement by you that I'm pro-life, I like life, I like it, I want it, I need it. Well, that's your problem. It's not a problem you can sit there and put on the table that the whole international community needs to respect what Pyrrho wants. Oh, I said his evil name again. No. And your victims certainly don't have every right to say, fuck you, really loud. And say, that's just plain stupid. And as somebody who's sat on the roller coaster and watched what happens on the roller coaster, and had some of it happen to me, but you know, I've been very lucky. And I'm very aware of how fucking incredibly lucky I have been. And that awareness makes me very aware, almost more aware than if it actually had happened to me. If I was actually one of the victims, because I've had the time to reflect. I haven't been distracted by the absolute horror. You know, I've had the horror, but not the absolute horror. So I haven't been consumed by it, where I'm just totally distracted by my personal condition. So I have the opportunity to see it and reflect on it rationally and say, gee, you don't do this. This is I would never get back on this thing again, because I can see what my fate would have been. That would have been my fate, or that would have been that. I wouldn't want to do that for Trump's billions. I wouldn't want to be that asshole. I wouldn't want to spend 10 seconds in that cranium. And living in that Borg, living in that concentration camp that you're calling Paradise Island. This is a misadventure. This isn't great adventure. This is a misadventure. I'm a misadventurist. Anti-misadventurist. Don't have them. Don't make stupid mistakes. And you know, and there was a comment in his comment section, some little glibite, you know, I think it's some silly stupid name like Henry Potter or something. Yeah, we can only just do what we can do. But, you know, it's this whole fucking bullshit. Like it takes, like it's a terrible struggle. Like there's only so much we can do. We can't. You mean I have to raise my hand and say, yeah, I don't like impositions either, and yeah, you know, misadventures are stupid. Don't do something that's unnecessary. Don't get on rickety. Don't put kids on rickety roller coasters. You can't raise your hand and say that. How rickety do I have to make it? So I've made this argument so many times in the past. But I mean, how many kids can you kill and it's still okay to have kids? How many can you give cancer to? How many? What number do I have to increase it to before you say no mas? I mean, 9 out of 10 lion cubs are killed. Do I have to make it, you know, 29 out of 30? Or 500 out of 501? I mean, how bad do I have to make it before you say no mas? No, that's a misadventure. That's a stupid mistake. Don't press the go button on that. Don't defend that. So how bad do I have to make it? How bad do I have to make World War II for you to say, oh, you'll never make up for that. You'll never pay for that war. I mean, in the sense, we'll never do anything good enough to justify all those dead kids. And a lot of them were kids. We'll never defend. We'll never do anything of such. We'll never dance a good enough dance to justify that price of admission. That price of admission was insanely high, and the floor show is insanely insipid. Just a bunch of people saying, turn on the news and let's see if we can jerk off to it. See if there's any like murders I can enjoy watching, and you know, maybe some cop will beat up some homeless dude. Yeah, I love that shit. Yeah, that's not worth it. That's not worth the big toe of one of the victims of World War II. And that's all we've got to show for ourselves. And you keep pretending, oh, no, we're not all full of shit. Yeah, no, we're full of incredible shit. And your silly delusions that, oh yeah, well, we'll just do this thorium thing, you know, lukewarm nuclear power. You know, that'll save us. No, not a chance, asshole. Oh, anyway, it's probably enough of a video. Really is spectacularly humid and hot today, which is nice, but there's no sun, so it's not really spectacularly hot and humid, so that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But everything is just... Butterflies are showing up, but not too many of them yet. No hummingbirds, which really surprises me. I mean, this is Paradise Island for hummingbirds. All these petunias, they love petunias. I've had hummingbirds every year. No hummingbirds. Strange. Probably something. Probably a reason. Some years things just go... Last couple of years my roses have all been dying. So, you know, some kind of virus. This is a weird looking zinnia. Variety Weirdius. Purdius. Yeah, I'll name everything after... Everything stupid after Purdius. One little sunflower. Hello, I'm alone in here by myself. It's better than a crowd, to tell you the truth. The rest of the sunflowers would just end up being assholes. So, yeah, that's enough. Sorry, but everything's just growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, growing and growing and growing and growing. Hibiscus, another week, they'll be flowering. Spectacularly big flowers if they don't get knocked down by the rain or something. You know, little postal things. Look at that. Look at all those flowers. Very flowery. Yeah. So that's another thing. You know, Pyrrha just implies that if you have the opinion that this is a rickety roller coaster, highly dangerous, and really just silly, because we're basically all just robots anyway, you know, working out our programming. And so we're not even doing anything truly original or truly creative or any of that shit. We're just reflexive byproduct organisms of the trend line and, you know, blah blah blah. Nothing, you know, it really is deflating in a sense of, you know, personal ego stuff, because you really didn't earn it. Nobody earns it. Just that some people earn even less. You know, very nice here. Pileated woodpecker over there making noise. Let's see if we can do it again. That really deep knocking sounds. Big chicken woodpecker. That's him there. It's right over there somewhere. Big fucking woodpecker. Anyway. The bush style hibiscuses are just starting to flower. A little white one there. Here's the bush type. The other type are, I don't know what the hell, you know, seasonal. I mean, one season, I mean, they grow new stuff every year. Those are trees almost. Anyway, you don't need those kind of details though. I was just saying, yeah, so you know, yeah, we're just robots, and I was saying something. Maybe I'll go back to where I was saying it, and I'll remember what I was saying. Yeah, probably not. Pyrrha was an asshole. Fuck, not a kook. Useless sack of shit. Can't put two facts together right ever. Yeah. I just, yeah, so whatever. Yeah, the emotional thing. So yeah, just keep talking as if you have to be some miserable person. I've never been a miserable person, especially in my interactions with other people. I've always tried to be helpful and upbeat. I always try to, if there's a way to make them it's almost the argument, I give people the opportunity to take the pressure off themselves. I almost want to make the argument that, look, you don't have to be a perfect vegan. You don't have to be you don't even have to be a vegetarian. You just have to defend the idea that that's the way we should make human beings if we're going to bother making them. There's no need to make them meat eaters. It's proven fact they can do just fine not being. And even that statement is a valuable statement. And so, but anyway, so it's this idea that I'm not sitting here trying to get people to be depressed or gloomy about existence. I'm making an argument that when you're going to do this serious philosophy stuff, right, in your day-to-day life, you have to get caught up in it. You get caught up in your fetishes, your desires, and you enjoy your cupcakes, a metaphor for the variety of pussy you like, and you fuck it. And I'm totally with that. There's no argument against living your own personal little life and sailing your own little boat. But I'm saying that when you're going to have a serious conversation about these important acts of creation and infrastructure and what we should invest money in or human capital in, those questions are not personal, subjective ones. Those are not about what your favorite candy is. Those are bigger questions, and they require an honest and real conversation. And so that conversation might be discouraging, like you find out I'm a robot. Ooh, that's a little woo. I'm just a robot. I didn't write any of the programming. Culture did, science did, lots of things did, but I didn't do it. Anything we can call an eye. The eye was made of all of this other stuff. The ingredients are all external ingredients. The internal ingredients, even my parents, certainly aren't me. So I didn't make those. I didn't make the genetic ingredients, and I certainly didn't make the environmental ingredients. So most of what I am is just a mixing bowl, and I didn't even make the shape of the bowl. And yeah, that's a little bit deflating, in terms of an ego issue, but it's not catastrophic. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy the cupcake and the pussy. It just means that it's important to understand in the context of a conversation about what the fuck we're endorsing, what we're voting for. And you're pretending because it's not labeled explicitly that you can feign some kind of ignorance and pretend you were ignorant, and you weren't. There's a monarch butterfly. No, I mean a swallowtail. They're always in such nice, early in the season. They're in such good shape. I have to try to get a picture before it gets pecked to pieces, grabbed by the praying mantises and the birds and whatnot. So anyway, all right, now it's enough of a video. So till the next time, lots of tomatoes. Now I have all kinds of different shapes and sizes, so I should have quite a variety. These look like they'll stay cherry tomatoes, but other ones have these have a kind of a different shape, so I think they'll go bigger. Those will stay small. I think these will be grapey ones. See these here. I think they're going to be little tomatoes. Anyway, enough of that. Lots of flowers on there. Whew, lots of flowers. Anyway, okay. This really is so nice. Yeah, I'm very lucky. I acknowledge my good fortune, and I enjoy it when I can. But it doesn't make me forgetful of what I have seen on the roller coaster. The lion, the proud lion, walking the savannah thingy, and then 6 months later he's starved, His tail has been eaten off by infection, and he's walking his last 10 steps of his life before he falls over and dies. Yeah, I've seen that. Somebody videotaped it, you see. And it was an ugly thing to see. A harsh and brutal and sad. And these people who just glibly step over that lion and all of his dead cubs and all of the horror that takes place on this planet, they just keep walking on it. Squish, squish, crush, squish. They're like Terminators walking through the skull yard. You know, because their programming says life, life, life. They can't do any thinking about what that means, which is death, harm, torture, death, harm, torture. They're just so fucking stupid. The programming owns them. The traditional notion. I must preserve the traditional notion. Puke.